Princess Catherine has just delivered a humiliation so precise, so silent, and so devastating that it didn't need a single word, and somehow that made it louder than anything anyone could have said. The kind of move that doesn't trend because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. Because when actions speak this clearly, they don't just echo, they expose. And right now, the question hanging in the air isn't what Catherine did, it's why someone else couldn't stand it.
Breaking today, Meghan Markle just couldn't deal with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, completing one of the most amazing feats for a royal who is recovering from cancer in total privacy, because she didn't shout about this Three Peaks mission at all until she had actually achieved it, which is just Catherine all over, isn't it?
Think about the timing. Just after surviving something as life-altering as cancer, when most people would step back, disappear, rebuild quietly, Catherine did the opposite. She stepped into something brutal, something exhausting, something almost symbolic in its difficulty, the National Three Peaks Challenge. England, Scotland, Wales, 3 peaks. Less than 24 hours. Not a photo shoot, not a staged moment, a relentless climb. And suddenly, this wasn't just a challenge. It became a statement, a message disguised as endurance. Because while others talk about strength, Catherine decided to demonstrate it in the most physically undeniable way possible. And people noticed. Oh, they noticed.
Princess Kate has completed the Three Peaks Challenge to raise money for cancer. The Princess of Wales climbed the highest peaks in England, Scotland and Wales over a period of 24 hours. She says she took part in the challenge to raise money for the hospital where she was treated for her cancer and build awareness for holistic healthcare. Princess Kate has been recovering from cancer after revealing her diagnosis 2 years ago now.
But here's where it gets deeper, where it stops being just a story and starts feeling like something bigger. She didn't just climb mountains. She climbed with purpose. She tied it to something personal, her cancer diagnosis, her recovery, her need to give back. That quiet line, "I have to give something back," wasn't just sentiment. It was positioning. Because while one narrative builds through headlines, another builds through lived reality. And suddenly you start seeing a contrast forming. One that doesn't need to be pointed out, one that just exists.
I'm so grateful to be here, to be strong enough to walk these hills. But more importantly, it's to give something back and acknowledge really all the incredible work going on up and down this country.
And then, in the middle of all this intensity, something happens that feels almost cinematic. Catherine meets an 11-year-old boy, Ted Haslam. Paralyzed, a spinal tumor changed his life at just 3 years old. But there he is, climbing, fighting, reaching the summit in a specially adapted wheelchair. And Catherine's reaction? Not performative, not exaggerated, just genuine recognition. "I'm so impressed." Simple, direct, real. But isn't it interesting how moments like this don't need amplification? They carry weight on their own. They don't need an audience, and yet they resonate louder than anything staged.
You're not too cold. It's not great weather, is it? No, so many people are still in their t-shirts. Why are you doing that? What do you think? Is your camera? Have you got any? I'm so impressed with nearly the second week. Yeah? Super well done you. We'll be cheering you on. Hopefully we'll see you on Snowdon again.
And then there's the randomness, the unpredictability. Jackie Long, just another hiker, just another person enjoying the climb, until suddenly he realizes who's beside him. No announcement, no entourage screaming her arrival, just shock, surprise, a handshake at the summit, and she moves on. No lingering, no capture the moment, just gone. Almost like she didn't need the moment to define her. And that's where things start to feel uncomfortable for anyone watching closely. Because what happens when someone refuses to play the usual game?
Just standing at somewhere waiting for my friend, and then I suddenly spot out Princess there, a lean female hiker who is really climbing up. So she was on her cap and in a quite dark outfit, and also carrying a black backpack. And then I suddenly realized she was Catherine. But, I was speechless. I could not really know what proper names I should name her, because I don't want to be impolite.
Now step back. Look at the bigger picture. Catherine moves across the UK, England to Scotland to Wales in under 24 hours. No fear, no hesitation, no narrative about danger or risk holding her back. And yet, in another corner of the same story, there are repeated concerns about safety, about returning, about what could happen. Do you see the contradiction? Because the public certainly does. And contradictions, they don't stay quiet for long. But the most unsettling part, it's not even the challenge itself. It's how it was handled. No overpromotion, no weeks of buildup, no carefully orchestrated media storm. She simply did it. And then the world woke up to the result. That's it. And in that silence, something louder started forming. A comparison. Not forced, not announced, just naturally emerging. And once people start comparing, they don't stop. Because suddenly, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. One approach whispers and still dominates the conversation. The other shouts and somehow struggles to hold attention. One climbs mountains quietly. The other makes sure every step is seen. And here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to say out loud. What happens when authenticity outshines performance? What happens when one moment exposes a pattern? And more importantly, who's watching this unfold and realizing they've been seeing the difference all along? And just when it seemed like the story had already said everything it needed to say, that's when it took a turn that made people pause. Because moments like these don't end at the summit. They echo, they ripple, and sometimes they trigger reactions that reveal far more than the original act ever could. While the world was still absorbing what Catherine had done, still processing the sheer discipline, the restraint, the quiet impact, something else happened. Something that didn't feel random. Something that felt time. Because instead of acknowledgement, instead of even a subtle nod to what had just dominated headlines, there was a sudden shift, a product announcement. A carefully dropped moment that tried to redirect attention. And that's where the tension sharpens. Because this wasn't just about two separate events happening close together. No, it felt like a collision. One moment built on endurance and silence. The other built on visibility and timing. And when those two collide, people don't just watch, they compare. And the comparisons? Brutal, unforgiving, because the public isn't blind. They remember patterns. They remember how things are introduced, how they're framed, how much noise surrounds them before they even happen. So when one story unfolds almost in secrecy and still dominates every headline, while another needs to fight for attention at the exact same moment, it raises questions, not gentle ones, sharp ones. The kind that linger. Because here's what no one can ignore anymore. Catherine didn't just complete a challenge. She controlled the narrative without appearing to control anything at all. That's the part that stings. That's the part that's difficult to replicate. You can plan a rollout. You can schedule announcements. But you can't manufacture authenticity in real time. You can't script how people feel when they witness something that wasn't clearly designed for them to witness in the first place. And that's why this moment hit differently. Meanwhile, the reactions online started forming a pattern that felt almost symbolic. One image after another, one comment after another. People pointing out how one woman was climbing literal mountains, pushing her limits, connecting with real people, showing up in ways that felt grounded. And the other, being remembered for a moment that felt almost trivial in comparison, sliding down a hill, laughing it off. A light moment, yes, but placed next to something this intense, this meaningful, it suddenly looked different. It wasn't just a funny clip anymore, it became a contrast point, a symbol. And symbols, they stick. But maybe the most telling detail wasn't on the mountain at all. It was at the finish line. Because waiting there wasn't a camera crew. It wasn't a staged reveal. It was family. William, George, Charlotte, Louis, her brother James, her parents Carol and Michael. A full circle moment that didn't need explanation. That didn't need to be framed for an audience. It just existed. And in that moment, something else became clear. This wasn't just about proving strength. It was about showing what support actually looks like when the cameras aren't the priority. And that's where the story refuses to settle. Because now the question isn't just about what happened, it's about what keeps happening. Why every major moment seems to trigger another. Why every achievement quietly invites a reaction somewhere else. Is it coincidence? Is it strategy? Or is it something deeper? Something that's been building for far longer than anyone wants to admit. Because here's the uncomfortable truth sitting right beneath the surface. This doesn't feel like a rivalry built on equal ground. It feels like one side isn't even playing the same game. One moves in silence and still commands attention. The other moves loudly and somehow keeps chasing it. And when that imbalance becomes visible, it changes everything. It changes how people interpret every future move, every announcement, every appearance. So now we're left with something unresolved, a pattern that's too consistent to ignore, a tension that refuses to disappear, and a question that keeps getting louder the more people try not to ask it. Is this competition real? Or is it only one person who believes it is? is. Because if one side isn't even acknowledging the game, then what exactly are we watching unfold? And more importantly, what happens the next time another perfectly timed moment appears out of nowhere?